Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Day in History, our nightly look back at a specific day in history, where we take a look back at a specific day in history. We look at the events of that day, the historic context in which the events took place, and the historic ramifications of them. We also take a look at some people that were born and some people that died on that day. If you have not yet, please hit the subscribe button, the bell notification icon to be alerted anytime I post new content, and tell a friend. And without any further ado, this day in history, March 29th. And on this day, in 1936, Adolf Hitler received 98.9% of the vote in an election, with 99.9% of voter turnout. The Nazi Party was the only legal party. The voters had a simple question: do you approve of German occupation of the Rhineland? And a list of candidates to vote for. In a publicity stunt, a few votes were held aboard Zeppelins as voters cast their ballots above the Rhineland. The election of 36 was the first election after the enactment of the Nuremberg laws, which had removed the ability of ethnic minorities the right to vote. As I said, the Nazi Party received 98.9% of the vote, and there was 99.0% turnout. So this was a sham election. Obviously, no one can claim that, oh my God, this was a free and fair election with those kinds of results. And as I said, this was the first election since the enactment of the Nuremberg laws, which had removed the ability of ethnic minorities the right to vote. One thing the Nazi Party did in the run-up to this election was they lowered the voting age in this election so that you would have the same number of voters turn out for this election that had turned out in the prior elections. But the Nazi Party was the only legal party in the election and approved guest parties. Births that occurred on this day. In 1943, in St. Helier, which is a Greater London estate, John Major was born. And we're going to go back to our jaunt through United Kingdom politics of the past, since World War II, that we've been on for a little bit of time now. Prior to becoming Prime Minister, Major had served as Foreign Secretary, and immediately before assuming the Prime Ministership, he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Major served at a time of great promise for the world, but also a time of great change. He was Prime Minister during the Gulf War, which the United Kingdom, along with almost every other major country, participated in with the United Nations. I mean, that's one thing some people forget. The first Gulf War was fought under the United Nations flag. And also, he reigned at a time when there was some major economic turmoil. Major famously in the election of 1992, the exit polls on that election night said that it would be a Labour government. That was going to be the outcome, and he actually won a majority. It was a very reduced majority for Mrs. Thatcher's last election. After she resigned, he took over, but he had a majority. And he would serve until 97. He would have some challenges to his leadership. In 95, he tried to resign as party leader of the Tories, which would have forced him to resign as prime minister. But this was more of a show of force by Major than anything, and he won a resounding return to office. It was basically a show of support for him in the party. And although most of the economic turmoil had subsided by the next election in 1997, voters had blamed Major and the Conservative Party, not to mention that there had been numerous scandals involving members of the Conservative Party, including prominent members of the government. And when I say government in this term, in a parliamentary system, when I say government, I'm talking about the ministerial offices of state, and many members of the major government had been involved in numerous scandals. And also the fact that, like in the United States, the more liberal party, which in the United States was the Democratic Party, and in the United Kingdom, it was the Labour Party, after suffering defeats in numerous elections, moved more towards a center position. You saw this in 1992 in the United States with Bill Clinton and the DLC. The third way message that Bill Clinton had. And in the United Kingdom, Tony Blair took some of these lessons and applied them to the Labour Party, and you had New Labour, and was elected in an overwhelming landslide in 97. And Major would be the last Tory prime minister until 2010, when David Cameron and the Conservatives would win a minority government in a coalition with the Liberal Democrats. That election was a very close election, but the Conservative Party had the most seats, and they formed a coalition with the Liberal Democrats, in which Nick Clegg, who was the leader of the Liberal Democrats, became the Deputy Prime Minister, and David Cameron became Prime Minister. So that's that. And I know some of you out there may be saying, Liberal Democrats and Conservatives. The Liberal Democrats are a very centrist party. And there have been prominent conservatives that have supported Liberal Democrats over the years, most famously in the most recent general election that was held in the United Kingdom. John Major said that he was going to vote for the Liberal Democrats because he opposed Brexit. Deaths that occurred on this day. In 1848, at the age of 84 in New York City, John Jacob Astor died. Astor was a fur trade and real estate mogul who became the first multimillionaire in the United States. And at the time of his death, he was worth $20 million and was the richest man in America. I will see you all tomorrow. Have a good night.